Alright, ladies and gentlemen, scum and villains, pirates and buccaneers. If you're new to my channel, you might not know what I'm doing here, but if you're not new, this should be very, very obvious, the path that I'm taking. For those of you who don't know, I like to mix my Mod Podge with acrylic paints, and through that process, I can cover my entire project, both giving it a base colour for the paint I'd like to use, as well as sealing the foam. One of the reasons I like to do that is because if I'm ever going to be putting spray paint on it for any reason, or primer or anything like that, using aerosol spray cans often melts and destroys XPS foam. Mod Podge seals it and protects it, so it prevents that from happening. And then here we're taking our clay that we baked for the eyes and for the teeth. I'm going to paint it. So what I did at first was painted it black because I knew that if you're going to be putting color on something, either having it black or white first allows the colors to really show through. But because the idea is this is a dead object, I didn't mind having like a dark contrast for the bright paints, and I do a lot of shading on it later to change the color anyway. And a lot of this is just testing to see what color of green I really wanted. So what I'm going to do here is actually put a lot of this really cool green paint that's blacklight paint. The whole idea here is to maybe have a couple black lights when my players are fighting this thing. The eyes are already going to glow, and as you're going to see later on in the video, I actually use some glow-in-the-dark wax leather thread. And so by adding this like blacklight green paint to the bottom of the eyes and to parts of the jaw, when the blacklight's on it, a lot of it's going to glow in the dark, which is going to be really freaking cool. And I'm very excited for the finished project. At this point, I remember looking at it and thinking, this looks cartoony, this looks dumb, but that, in my opinion, changes very quickly. Once I get the dry brushing done, once I get some other things on here, I start to think it looks pretty badass pretty quick. Alright, so as promised, I decided to put some actual wood pieces on the side of the ship, and I'm really happy when I was doing this that I decided to make a bunch of different sizes for this and different shapes as well as the broken ones. My plan from the beginning was always to have it look like the ship was normal and then all of a sudden split apart to reveal the mouth and the eyes and everything so it would shock the players. So for the sides, I wanted the long pieces that look normal, but then for the front, I took all kinds of broken leftover pieces of wood from different projects and kind of randomly placed them, and I always wanted to have two of the broken pieces coming down on the front to make it look like teeth. I decided to only put one row of actual like clay teeth in the bottom, and I wanted jagged sharp pieces of wood to look like the top row of teeth hanging down, which ended up working really well, as along with these like random scrap pieces from other projects that I put on the front of the bow as well. But yeah, I think it adds a lot of character to it, having the real kind of stayed and brushed wood pieces on the side of the ship, and I'm incredibly happy with how that part of the project in particular came out. You know, I really do love sea shanties. I do, personally. I think they're amazing, but I found this really cool license-free, no copyright set of pirate music on YouTube. So I have a little nod to them in the description of this video with a link to the actual YouTube video itself. So I'm gonna throw that in the background here and use that for the rest of the video rather than kind of putting together different songs here because they already did it for me. Alright, so I kind of looked around by different different things until I found a circular shape that was about the size I wanted to put shields on the side of the Raider ship. So I just, pressed it in to get the shape, carefully cut everything out, sanded down the sides, and then used a toothpick to stylize and put the wooded grain in there so I could paint shields and then put them on the side of the ship. Obviously, they're much bigger than the Mini's going to be because they're just meant to be ship protection, not people protection. They're permanent shields for the ship. At least that's what I'm going to explain to people if they ask me in game of why these shields are so big. And, straight from Canada, the thing I use to create the inner circle is a toonie. That's right. We got our $1 and $2 coins here in Canada, the loonie and the toonie. So, enjoy that weirdness to everyone watching from countries that don't have that stuff. Alright, so as promised, this is the glow-in-the-dark leather thread that I have for my leatherworking project. So I put the black light on it there, and you can see how well it glows. So later on in the project, there's going to be a couple other things that show like that green black light paint, and so some of this thread's actually going to glow in the dark too. So there's going to be some real cool, like spooky nighttime combat that I'll be able to do with my players and have those little details and little effects show through. This part's really, you know what, there's probably a lot of people out there that have better methods for like holding up the rigging when you actually tie it to the mast. I don't. I just kind of like try to wrap things around and tie it as quickly as possible before it falls. Again, I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I'm sure there's a lot of better options out there. And if you guys have cool ways of doing that sort of thing, you can let me know. I do have some like vices and things, but it's hard when it's dangling and trying to like balance up in the air against something because gravity's working against you. But I did my best to tie it in place and then made sure I put some super glue on there so that it would dry quickly enough to hold. And then here we have our sail design. Our front sail is going to have like a skull on it, which is going to be pretty cool. But I basically cut out paper versions of everything. And then I cut two bits of fabric for each sail. Because then the idea was I was going to stitch them together to make them a bit tougher. If I was using canvas, and if you can get your hands on canvas, you only have to cut this once. Use canvas sails. It's going to look so much cooler. It's going to look so much better. But I was kind of like rushing to try to get the project done because it had been so long already that I decided to just get cotton. And then I used very watered down, like very, very watered down Mod Podge to double layer it. And then once it was dried, it still had some give to it, but it was a tougher, almost more canvas-like material for me. And then I took some thread and stitched together the outsides to give it that handmade look. And things worked out pretty great. And as you'll see at the end of this little section here, I use a little skull that I have to try to use some thicker Mod Podge and wetter Mod Podge to imprint kind of the shape of a skull on the main front mask. And then I use our green blacklight paint to very lightly paint in the recesses of the eyes and around the jaw and the mouth and everything. And I did it lightly enough that you can't really see it when you're just looking at it. It just looks black. But then when I put the blacklight over it, the skull really pops out and forms. And so, again, this didn't work out the way I had imagined or planned in my head. But at the end of the day, it still worked for the project, and I'm still happy with it. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm creating small wooden pieces that are going to, well, they're carved to look like wood, but they're foam. I'm going to put them on the sides of the ship, and then I'm going to put little metal hooks in the sides, and then that's what we're going to tie the side rigging. And I still haven't figured out what that actual part of the ship is called. I really need to look that up. But it's the ropes and the rigging that the sailors climb to get up to the mast and the top sails and everything to work the rigging of the actual sails. So I've carved these little wooden pieces and painted them. They're going to go on the sides with the metal hooks, and I'm going to pull the rope and string through it. And then the pieces I'm making right now are platforms on the sails themselves for players, or for players to climb up and then stop part way if they want to be a lookout, if they want to be a ranged fighter and like kind of be higher up on the ship. So I had to carve 2 pieces here. And if I was smarter, I would have thought of doing this first, carved a hole in the center of the piece so I wouldn't have had to attach 2 pieces around the mast, and I could have slid them down the mast and then put those circular pieces on over top. But c'est la vie, sometimes you don't think of things until later, and then you have to do 2 pieces. But you know what? We find a way to make it work. Okay, so here what I had to do is take one of my leather punches and actually punch holes in the sails, because for this part I'm actually using the leather thread. I'm not using the actual like stitching thread, and I knew it was going to be really difficult to pull the thread through because it was such a thick hole needed. So I took my leather punch, made some holes to make it easier for myself, and that way I could stitch and actually weave the sails onto the topsail masts. I will be the first person to openly admit that this does not look clean. I saw somebody doing this who makes model ships. They had different materials, obviously, that they used. They were sewing canvas, and they have a lot more experience at this. This is the first time I tried this, where I would actually stitch through the sail itself and wrap around the wood, and then stitch through and wrap around. And, you know, I thought watching the video of the other person doing it, oh, this is going to be easy. It was incredibly challenging. It was tough. I also have very big, fat fingers, and so it was kind of difficult for me. So I was moving around a lot, moving the ship around a lot. And again, it doesn't look the cleanest at the end. But you know what? It's functional. It'll work. And if that's the most disappointing part of the ship for me, I can live with that, and that's not the worst thing that could have happened. Oh man, this was the most like difficult to finish part of it because it was really straining on my hands, but also like really tedious and really boring. And it was also really tough to keep the ropes taut and tight. Like I actually bought thread and I was using like what looked like real ropes if it was, blown up. It was, the best material look-wise, I thought, but it was so hard to work with, and it frayed a lot on the edges, so it was really tough to hold it together. In hindsight, I probably just could have used the wax thread again, but I wanted it to look like a thicker, different material, since it's not just holding up sails. People are climbing on these, right? It's holding body weight. I don't know. It just, once you get it taut like this, and you get it, the ropes like straight, as soon as you start pulling on it here to tie the knots into it, it's loosening up, and then it's pulling on the metal rings on the side. So that's just something you have to deal with. It's difficult. I suppose the argument could be made that you could do the whole part of this first and then loop it through the metal rings and then just do the top part afterward. That way you're not pulling on everything because you've already pre-tied a lot of these knots before you attach it to the ship. So that's an option. That's a thought process for you guys to decide how you want to do if you're going to do this project. But just doing this part, just doing all of the climbing ropes and the rigging, this took me like 2 or 3 days to finish because I just didn't want to do it. It was a real pain. But obviously afterwards, I am really happy that I did it because I think it adds a really cool detail to the project. I can't believe I'm done. This is nuts. This took me forever. I started working on this project on September 23rd, and today is September 13th. Or no, November 13th. Wow, my brain is not working. Yeah, started on September 23rd, and November 13th, I'm finished up now. Overall, I think the total film time on this project was about 12 or 13 hours, and there was work that I did off camera, and there was time waiting for glue to dry, things like that. But this really did take me the longest, I think, of any project that I've worked on. But I'm so excited to be finished up. So first of all, just as a reminder, I wanted to show you guys the ship that I made years ago before I started my YouTube channel. Now this ship is very basic. I mean, I've got my helm, I've got the little ladders and the steps and things like that. Little details in here that I really enjoyed. And I rolled up the sails on this one just for simplicity's sake. And I really loved it. It has the gridded squares here for me to be able to place my characters and move them along. And it was great, but I realized if I ever do end up getting to have any of my in-person campaigns play on a ship, I can have sea creatures jump aboard, all that stuff, but I really did want another ship that I could use in combat. So the first one I wanted to make here was our Viking Raider ship, our Raider ship, which is great. I really love kind of the dragon that we sculpted on the front of the long ship here. That was really cool. I want to do a different sail. This is just a sail that I did to complete the video, to finish it. I want to actually go out and get white and red fabric, sew them together in stripes, and then put it onto the mast here, the top sail, a little bit more secure and a little bit nicer than what I did here. This was more like just a quick job to get something finished so I could put this video out to you guys and make you not have to wait for it any longer, because I've been talking about this and posting about this, and you guys have really been patient waiting. So thank you very much for that. I even found the word for treasure in Old Norse, and then I translated it into Elder Futhark and wrote that word on the back of the little treasure chest inside the boat here. Got the little shields on the side, which is great. I am happy with this. This will be great as an alternative ship to help fight against the big one here. But the pièce de résistance, you all voted on what kind of ship you wanted to see me make, and you all voted on a ghost ship and a mimic ship evenly. So I decided to make a ghost mimic ship. And without further ado, ta-da! This here is our finished product. You'll see in the showcase portion of the video just before this, a lot more detailed shots about what this is and how everything came out. It was kind of difficult to plan this all out, but it ended up actually looking better than what I had expected. A lot of things in here that I would do differently, but a lot of things that I really love. I wanted to make the front of the ship the mimic ship. I ordered those glow-in-the-dark eye beads so that they could be the different eyes, because mimics have tons of different eyes, right? And then I thought about the tongue, but I also thought if this thing is dead, the tongue might have like decayed, and it also would have been very difficult to get a tongue in there with all the details I wanted to put in the mouth with the teeth, the broken like ship wood here, and then the seaweed and like the moss kind of coming out of the mouth. So obviously the mimic ship was the first portion. Turn it into a mimic. And then ghost ship. How do we make it a ghost ship? Well, obviously the grain coloration did a lot of that. Having the glow-in-the-dark skull shape on the front sail is very ghostly, which I was very excited about. It didn't come out exactly the way that I planned in my head, but I still think it looks pretty great. And then I put some chains on here, because ethereal chains are always a nice ghostly thing. I don't even know what this is called. I should probably look this up, but kind of like the side rigging up here that they climb. That was the most annoying and frustrating part of this entire thing, I'll be honest with you. I did not enjoy that, but I think tying the rope bits together and doing it all manually ends up looking a lot better than what I did here, which was just taking small like skewers and kind of wrapping and tying the wax thread around them and then going up. This took a long time as well, and I put a lot of glue on each one of these things. It was a pain in the butt. And I honestly do think that this one, although it took longer and was much more of a pain in the butt, I think it does look it does look a lot nicer. Overall, I'm really excited about this. There's a couple things like I don't have a helm on this one, and I don't have ladders going up to the different sections. And the reason being is because the Mimic would be mimicking a ship of what it sees, and it would see the sails, it would see the rigging, it would see the mast, it would see the bowsprit, it would see the deck, like the foredeck, the aft deck, like all the things that it would see from a distance looking at a ship. It wouldn't think about the human features because it wouldn't need to. So things like a ladder and steps would never cross its mind. So when I was thinking about, am I going to put these things in here? I thought, well, it's going to really take up space if I ever want to get my players on here before they find out it's a Mimic ship. If I want them battling on it, I really can't take up all that space. But the mentality behind it also thinking, well, why would a Mimic think about stairs? You know, it's not going to need them. That kind of became my excuse or my reasoning for making that decision as well. Whew. Well, I got to thank you guys so much for your patience with this video. Obviously, taking a month and a half to make something is not usually the timeline that I want to keep. But based on my busy schedule and, you know, my lack of time, that's what it ended up being. But you guys were all very supportive and you were excited to see the finished product. I was excited to make it for you. Thank you guys very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you on the next crazy project I set my mind to here on Redbeard's Workshop.